And that's why you always watch your step when the monkeys come by. What's going on, everybody? This is the Coverband Confidential podcast, the podcast for cover band musicians and band leaders too little to rock more and sunglass in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
Dan, I came in on two wheels. I'm fresh from Mexico.
Okay.
We landed in Atlanta at 4 o'clock. We were home before 6. Took everything out of the suitcase and put everything away and just came down here because, frankly, this week is bananas. You know, we're right back into the thick of things. It's never really a good time to spend 4 days in a different country during the school year, but, you know, you do what you got to do.
Listen, when people are getting married, you go.
That's right. And this is one of those long time coming kind of situations. And we got to go with some friends of Amber's and ours, and we got to have a good time without the kids, and it was fun.
And monkeys.
We had monkeys come and visit us in our kind of building where they were, because all of a sudden there was all of these thatched roofs in the resort, and we came home one night and they were all climbing up there, and we're like, oh, that's so much fun. And then we woke up the next day and there's like monkey paraphernalia. Debris. Yes. I went to go get coffee for Amber, and I was like, by the way, watch your step when you come in, when you're coming out of the room. It's a little treacherous.
You'll watch your flip-flops. Indeed.
But yeah, it was cool. Lots of entertainment. Saw a bunch of music and stuff, and I had posted this in the Slack and on Threads. But the one thing that kind of warmed my heart was that as we were walking home from, I think it was right after the wedding ceremony, there was just a group of dudes packing up, coiling cables, just shooting the breeze. I was like, oh, this is just, everybody does this.
Everybody does that.
It's not, it's not where you are. It's a universal experience.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was great. I was like, okay, we are just a certain breed, I suppose.
Well, if there's shit to be shot, we're going to shoot it.
Absolutely. And we're just the ones to do it.
Yeah. Nobody else is going to do it for us.
Nobody better than us.
Darn right.
So that's pretty much it as far as catching up goes. We've got 2 dates coming up at the end of May. We've got a live band karaoke thing and an 80s thing. So we have really got to get together, get in the room and start hammering some stuff out. I had an idea on the flight back that I haven't really seen anybody do before, and I don't know if I really want to. Should I divulge it? Should I keep it to myself until after I potentially do it? Or
you should divulge it. You're inside the cone of silence.
Yes, because nobody watches this or listens to it.
Yeah, nobody.
Something that I have not seen anyone do yet, and it could just be my ignorance or the silo that I live in. The Meta Ray-Ban sunglasses.
Yeah.
Include, a front-facing first-person POV camera situation.
Right. Yes.
And I haven't seen any bands do promo or any sort of content from the first-person perspective. And right. I wonder if that would be compelling or interesting.
Like if you could put your live first-person view on a screen behind you as you performed.
Not even that, just like in like your promo video, like being able to show clips of the band performing from the audience perspective, but also clips of the band performing from the band's perspective.
Yeah, and you could do that with those glasses and not look like a dork who had an action camera strapped to your head.
Right. I don't know how to facilitate that because I certainly cannot buy 6 pairs of those sunglasses for my band at the moment. Could I buy a single pair and like throughout the show be like, okay, now it's your turn.
Your turn. Pass them around.
I don't know if there's like a rental, anybody who's renting them or whatever. I don't even know what the setup is. I demoed them at a store when they first came out, and honestly, pretty compelling product other than the meta-ness of it. I don't love that part, but there's not really a comparable product on the market that I'm aware of. If there is, and I just don't know about it, let us know, coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. But I have seen people use them to make content. There's this guy named Ivan or Ivan on TikTok, and he uses them. His whole thing is that he's just like this bro dude in California that's been learning Spanish. And what he does is he goes to food trucks or Latin restaurants and speaks with the people who work there and orders food and then reviews it basically. But he uses the glasses as that first person perspective so that he can interact without it feeling too, I don't say confrontational, but like whatever that is, the separation kind of deal. In those videos, he always kind of includes a clip like, hey, I'm recording this right now. I use this to practice my Spanish and that kind of thing. It's really cool. But it is really interesting because like he's just like a normal, his delivery as an English speaker is very like plain and like whatever. And then he starts speaking Spanish, and he learned Spanish from a friend of his who's from Mexico. So he speaks with this very like flowery Mexican accent, and his personality just like, it's so much more out there when he's speaking Spanish compared to the way that he speaks normally. And there's all the comments are always full of him when he goes from Ivan to Ivan, and how things get much more interesting then. I just think it's a cool idea. And I don't know if anybody is doing it or has thought about it, but throwing that out there, maybe a good idea.
I mean, I record most shows with at least 3 stationary cameras, I use the Mevos, right? But if in addition, everybody was recording from their POV at the same time, like you would have a lot to work from to build a show, build a video output from that show. Well,
and I don't know if necessarily seeing the entire show from that perspective is interesting.
No, but intercutting to it could be kind of great. I mean, you could see kind of what it's like for the bassist and the drummer to lock in together and meet eyes. That moment of bassist drummer sync could be a kind of a cool thing to capture.
So I'm still mulling that over, but that was I just turned to Amber's like, I had this idea, and she's like, she pauses, the thing in her deal. She's like, that's great, honey.
It's good. How many hundreds of dollars will that
cost?
Oh
yeah, it would be if they got them for everybody, it would be like in the thousands of dollars.
Lots. Yeah.
But speaking of thousands of dollars, we'll be talking about that shortly on the main topic of what we're getting into.
Before we do, though, I have some news.
Please.
I have my first gig back booked, and it's a very low. I know. It's very, very exciting. It's low impact, zero money, but it's the annual Porch Fest at one of our neighborhoods in town. Has a music festival. It's an all-day thing that people play sets on porches all up and down the streets, and it's super fun, great community thing. I've done it for years and years and years, and they reached out to me, and it's in early July, and I reckon by then I will be pretty much up to speed and ready to rock. And we're probably going to reach out to the place that I was going to be doing karaoke weekly and see about doing a one-off maybe next week.
Okay.
And just kind of see if we're ready for that. I don't know that I fully am ready to get back at it, but maybe a one-off that's kind of friends and family.
Okay.
It's more about the overall energy at this point. Anyway, yeah, I can see a gigging light on the end of the tunnel here. Getting the band going again when I have the other foot to deal with in the future. It's like, is it worth investing to get momentum up around a band when I'm going to have to take this time off again? It's kind of hard to picture, but sneaking some solos in there, I think that's very doable.
Yeah. One thing that I was thinking about is with your foot kind of still being on the mend, have you considered like changing the gear that you're using for those gigs? Like downsizing potentially, or kind of changing your setup?
Maybe. I already travel pretty darn light, but I do have a TurboSound IP300, just a standalone speaker that is probably easier to travel with than my, Electro Voice M50.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a bass bin, right? And I don't need one because I'm just, acoustic.
Yeah.
So I thought about that. Obviously I have this vision based on your last show of having lighting tubes involved. I won't do that the first time out. Sure. No point. But I do think that I can maybe pare down a little bit and make the load a little bit simpler.
That seems like something that I would definitely be considering, as you're kind of easing your way back into that whole world, finding a way to make it as low impact as possible. Seems like a move. Right. I'm so excited that you're getting back out there. I know that this has been a pretty rough quarter for you.
It has.
Some of these episodes have been a little, oh man, this feels kind of heavy, and I can just tell in your general demeanor, our communication that the prospect of getting back out there has definitely put some wind in your sails, and we're just glad to hear you back up and running.
Yep, me too.
Speaking of upward trajectories, I feel like we do this pretty much every episode, but we're hitting another milestone as far as housekeeping stuff. We hit 900,000 views on YouTube at the beginning of this month, and as of literally today, by the time this comes out, it'll be 920 probably. I feel like the viewership is starting to ramp up, and I'm starting to get like traction on stuff that's been out for a couple of years. So I'm not sure what the algorithm is doing, but it seems to be connecting stuff that we talked about a while back with folks, and it seems to be, resonating. So we'll be hitting 1 million in no time flat, I think.
Love it.
Onwards and upwards. Okay. Since I haven't really been doing anything but drinking Mai Tais and laying on the beach, there's no gig stuff to speak of, but there's a lot of things that have happened in the gear world that we would be foolish not to talk about.
And we're not foolish.
We are not, contrary to popular belief. So there were 3 things that we wanted to get into, and we'll kind of do them piece by piece so that everybody kind of gets their fill. And everything that we talk about is a dialogue with you guys. And so we're always open to questions and feedback. So if there's any particular information about any of the stuff that we're going to cover that you want to know more about, please let us know. Coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. We ultimately want to be the go-to resource for gigging folks and making gear purchase choices and that kind of thing. So that is what we're here to do. So coming right out of the chute, I got a very exciting shipment from Seymour Duncan last week, and I didn't get a chance to mess with it because I was super busy. But right before we started recording, I unboxed this beauty, which is the PowerStage 170 by Seymour Duncan. They sent this to me to do a review, and that's going to be coming out in the near future. But again, whatever you want to know about this, we want to know about that first so that we can kind of cater that review to you guys. If you don't know what the PowerStage is, it's basically a pedal formatted power amp, 170 watts solid state. It's got a big old dial and a 3-band EQ. And the thing that I like the best about it is that it's got a built-in power supply. So no nothing, just an IEC cable right in there.
Yep. And it's essentially an amp head. You'll come out of it right into a cabinet.
Yep.
Could you come out of it into anything else? Like if you were going to go straight to front of house, it's going to be at signal levels that are completely incompatible with that, right?
Yeah. This is strictly for powering a cabinet. So, I mean, dead simple. It's got an input and an output.
There you go.
If you wanted to do a split, though, it would be really easy because the intent for these is to run them basically after your modeler so that you can use whatever amp model deal that you have with a cabinet. So if you need to push some air, but you want to keep the tones that you're accustomed to, you can get one of these. And I definitely have a couple of gigs every now and then that request live amps, and I've used some assemblage of the amps that I've already got, plus my modeler for effects or whatever, but it would just be nice to have my tones the way that I prefer them just coming straight out of a cab. And this allows us to do that. The thing that I really like about the design of this is that they thought about the way that tone can be affected by whatever you have in the signal chain and whatever the speaker cabinet is made of, and whether it's a closed back or an open back. So having the 3-band EQ on the pedal, I think, is a genius move. There are lots of these kinds of things out in the marketplace, and some of them do, some of them don't. I think the EQ is a must-have. I think it gives you the ability to quickly make adjustments so that you can get the sound that you're looking for without too much fuss. And I'm really stoked to get this thing plugged in and demo it. Another thing I wanted to note about this is that it is assembled in the US. So hopefully, as long as they've got their components lined up, it hopefully won't be affected by whatever's going on as far as pricing goes, which by the time this comes out, some of that pricing will have already taken hold.
Not to take a sidestep from this, but I don't know if the news hit the Cancun bubble, but shipping is like way off. There were pictures of the port of Seattle. I think, that with like no boats in it, which never happens. So I think all of that stuff we talked about a few episodes ago of both the artificial inflation of prices because of the tariffs, but also the impact to availability of parts and components and supply chain disruptions. We're looking at all that again. That's just, it's here.
Well, and as I'm in the process of prepping other videos, I've had to reach out to certain manufacturers that, you know, had asked for reviews. Like, hey, do you want me to mention pricing? Do you is this going to be a thing? And I've gotten all sorts of answers, just depending on, you know, however they set up their supply chain stuff. One of the other things that we've been considering is that some of the things that we want to do reviews on are digital products, which are not affected by this stuff at all. So I've actually intentionally been putting them off in anticipation of not being able to give some of these products a fair shake with the pricing and that kind of stuff. So that's been an interesting conversation with some folks. But ultimately, you know, we want to put these things out at the right time so that you guys get the maximum impact on what they can do. So PowerStage 170, it feels solid. It seems dead simple. Sometime this week, I'm going to plug it all in with one of my 112 cabs and my HX stop, and we're just going to see what it can do. We should have the video out sometime in May. That's the plan, at least. And ultimately, we want to make sure that it hits all the notes that you guys want to cover. So if you have any specific questions about the PowerStage 170, shoot us an email, coverbandconfidential@gmail.com, because I'm in the process of putting that script together and shooting it. So we want to make sure that it's the right one for you guys. So let us know. So while the PowerStage has been out for a while, there have been two big gear announcements that have, I would say, sent shockwaves out into our world, mostly just because we've been seeing people talk about them in the Slack and in other groups. And so we really want to get into two big announcements. One primarily for guitar players and one primarily for bass players. Which one do you think we should get into first?
Let's do the bass player one first.
Okay. So this past week, Darkglass, which is a bass distortion pedal amp company, threw their hat into the modeling ring for the first time with a product called the Anagram. And if you haven't seen the product announcement, it's a 3-pedal stomp box with a set of rotary encoders and a touchscreen display. And it is a modeler designed specifically for bass players. Now, if you go onto their website, they've got some specific feature type things that they want to make sure that you know about. I don't know if all of those really resonate with people. Like, I'm not sure if it matters how many cores their DSP chips have. It's never been something that I like, because I remember when the Quad Cortex was announced, it was like, these have X number of cores. Like, well, okay.
Well, 4 for the quad. And it was something you had to manage. Like as you were building a patch, it showed you the amount of DSP you were consuming for each thing. And so you were aware of it. So I would say that adding cores to that does probably make some difference.
But you have to kind of be like in the ecosystem to understand what that actually means.
For sure.
If you're not in the modeler world and you're trying to like make a decision, I don't know if a 6-core DSP architecture means anything to you, or a dedicated
Certainly
OS.
True. Now, I mean, that 6-core architecture enables the other big feature, which is 24 simultaneous effects blocks, which is a lot. That's more than any other modeler I'm aware of. And that's certainly a function of the amount of grunt that's in the DSP setup for it.
Sure. And dare I say 24 blocks for a bass rig seems ambitious?
Excessive?
I don't know about excessive, but I will say ambitious.
I'm not a bassist. I like my bassist to play kind of normal. But you could probably do some pretty crazy stuff with 24 effects blocks on your bass.
Well, and what they're saying is a part of the whole DSP thing is that it supports some really interesting things. Apparently, it will accept neural amp models and you know, this ADA-X impulse response architecture.
Yeah, there's some standards that they're supporting. That means you could bring in models from, you know, outside the ecosystem, which is great, actually. That is the problem of modelers, is that each one of them is a walled garden.
Right. So the idea that you can have third-party content
That's revolutionary.
is pretty cool.
That is truly revolutionary, yeah. I also think the form factor of it is super cool. I think it's really neat looking. It's hard to get a sense of the size of it, but it doesn't look large. It looks Stomp Effects sized.
I watched the intro video and they had a person like touching it, and it looks to me around the same size as the Stomp XL, but with less buttons.
It's got three foot switches that you can tell by the markings on the case are chordable, right? You hit the left 2 and the right 2 at the same time. So they need to be at least close enough together for you to mash 2 at once.
Right.
That was the closest I could come to understanding intuitively what size the thing was. But it's a neat looking unit. It's actually, I think, really, really attractive.
Well, and I was really taken aback by how nice the visual interface looked.
Yeah.
It seems very sophisticated. Now, granted, the stuff that you're seeing in the introduction video could just be, CG. But there's some folks that have gotten their hands on it and have done pretty thorough reviews. And from what I see, it looks really nice. It looks like a high-end piece of gear.
Yep. It's got an external effects loop jacks. It's got stereo XLR and TS, I guess.
Yep.
USB, yeah. Now, the elephant in the room, of course.
Yeah, well, there's two things to me. So the first one is if you go to the product page on Sweetwater, there's a little caveat that says, not all of this stuff will be available when this model ships. Please speak with your Sweetwater agent about what those might be. At the time of this recording, I did not have a chance to do that. So I'm assuming that implies that some of the things that we're speaking of aren't quite ready for prime time. My guess would be that the neural modeling and this third-party integration stuff may not be in version 1.0.
Perhaps. And I will say, as somebody who bought the future promise of a product once, looking at you, Quad Cortex, and then felt somewhat burned by the pace with which those promises got fulfilled, I would need to know more before I invested.
And then you kind of alluded to this, but the retail cost on this product is $11.99 US. It's in between a number of products, but it primarily is right below things like the Helix and the Quad Cortex and a couple of other things. And it is strictly a base platform to our knowledge.
Yeah, which, I mean, maybe for a basis that focus makes it more valuable, right?
Yep.
I mean, it does kind of feel like if you look at the effects that are in the Helix ecosystem, base is there, but it's hard to not feel like it's a afterthought.
The bass sounds in the HX line I've actually been really pleased with. I think it's, depending on what it is that you're looking for, I think it makes perfectly serviceable bass tones.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. And it's just that the sheer volume of them, clearly lean guitar.
Oh, of course.
And also, I mean, and I already kind of said something that gives this away, but as a 6-string snob, like, how much can you really do to a bass? There are some things, but like, do you need 24 slots? Do you need a fully dedicated multi-effect?
Well, and that's what gets kind of confusing to me, because there's nothing stopping this product from being able to cater to more than just bass players.
Yeah.
But that puts them in a real weird spot, because if you were touting the ability to add third-party stuff, including neural models, what neural models are we talking about?
Right.
Could those possibly be guitar models? And if it is, then isn't that kind of eaten into what the Quad Cortex and the Nano Cortex are supposed to be doing? And are you cool with that? And is there any way I can get any higher?
There is. I have faith.
I'm sorry. But the other thing that I, just throwing it out there, and this was something that I had to tell Dan, is that Darkglass makes products for a certain kind of bass player. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if the Anagram leans more into that particular lane. If it does, it's not for everybody, because Darkglass is primarily known for a particular kind of bass tone, which is gritty and kind of punchy and piercy. The first time I ever heard of Darkglass stuff was Nolly Getgood from Periphery talking about them, and very integral to his tone on those records. And if you like that tone, I think it rips. It's not really practical for the kind of music I play, but for a lot of people it is. So if it kind of leans more into that metal prog kind of world, maybe it's not the right fit for your run-of-the-mill bass player.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely a core group of people who are hype for this product.
100%.
So I
even at that price point.
Yeah. Time will tell. Just like anything else, new stuff in the marketplace just breeds more competition, more innovation, all good things. So
100%.
Ultimately, we want Darkglass to be successful because it's just going to push the envelope for everybody else and add to the modeling world and just push everything forward. But I would be really curious to see how this expansion option plays out over the next few years, because if it basically just becomes a platform that you can load stuff into, that's a big deal. And that could make this a very appealing product to a much wider group of players, not just bass players who are really into, proggy bass tones.
Yep.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
The last thing we want to get into, and this is honestly, I think the biggest news out of all of these, just primarily based on the company, the product, and the price point and all of that. Neural DSP released Nanos 2.0 this past week.
Nanos.
And Nanos is the funniest thing in the world, because you were saying that the quad cortex, they call it Core OS, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But Nanos just sounds like they've rebuilt and upgraded your grandma.
They've upgraded Nan. Yeah.
Nanos 2.0. Now she, I don't know, like burns the dishes. I don't know. But all I see in my head is like some like mecha grandma that can.
Yeah.
That's like
I'm picturing it like
scaling walls and.
Who was the robot maid in the Jetsons?
Rosie.
That's Rosie. That's what I have in my head now. Yeah.
Yes, but apparently it's got nothing to do with that. It's just more stuff for the nano cortex, and those things are pretty big.
Yes.
So they're touting 47 new effects and utilities. That includes 3 new EQs, a doubler, 8 compressors, 4 new wahs, 2 filters, 9 overdrives, 6 modulation effects, 5 delays, 5 new reverbs. So fleshing out a much wider swath of things to add to your signal chain.
Yeah, plus some new routing flexibility.
Yeah, so talking about like utilities, they now have a built-in input gate that used to be a block that you had to put into the signal path. It's eating up DSP. Now, don't have to worry about that. It's there on the front end. Now, granted, every other modeler at this point does that, but
has had that for a while.
Yeah. And with this particular model, it's small footprint. The functionality is kind of optimized. So this is a welcome addition to the functionality of this unit.
For sure. There's a little bit of a giveaway there though, because the quad cortex has had that forever.
Yeah.
So it tells us that the nano cortex is not running off the same system, really. It's its own thing, and it's going to get its own upgrade path separately. It's got its own Nano OS versus Core OS. They're just separate enough ecosystems that they are going to evolve separately. Although a lot of the new things that are coming on there, I recognize their names from Quad Cortex. Sure. So, they've been ported over into the Nano OS world, which is a good thing.
But that is a distinction from the other players in this world. There's not a different OS from the HX Stomp to the Helix. It's all the same.
Right.
Just less features based on the amount of processing available.
Yeah.
But you don't have to wait for an amp or an effect to go from one product to the other. When they're released, it goes to all of them all at once.
Same with Headrush, the Prime and the Core and Flex. A new block comes out for them all simultaneously because it's all the same update.
So the biggest deal of this release is the added flexibility to the signal chain. Before this, the Nano Cortex was very much like the Pod Go, where the signal chain was pretty much set in stone, and you could you could add things or take things away, but you couldn't necessarily move them to different blocks. And while it appears that there's still some rigidity to that system, it's less than it was before.
Yeah, you get 2 or 3 blocks before the amp, you get 2 or 3 blocks after the amp, and you can put a limited prescribed range of effects into those blocks.
Right. And now you have more say over it, but it does say in the release notes that certain things are still optimized for this pre or post setup.
Yeah.
And putting something on the pre side might mean that it has different features than if you put them on the post side. So like some things would be only mono on the pre, but would be stereo on the post.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, it's better.
Well, yeah, it's more flexible. I think flexibility can be an illusion sometimes. When I was looking for my latest purchase, I did consider the Pod Go, and one of the things that I got honest with myself about was I've bought things, the Helix and the Quad Cortex, that are wide open. Put anything anywhere, do anything you want. And the reality is I never did. I did very standard signal path setups, and I only used 1 or 2 of them, maybe in a whole show. And I didn't come anywhere close to exploiting the full flexibility that those platforms provided. Sure. So something like the Pod Go is a little more opinionated about how things are built out. Like, kind of not the end of the world, because that's how I'm probably going to do it anyway. And, maybe it saves me $1 or $2, but maybe it also channels me toward better outcomes than if I had a whole playground to play in and mess things up in, end up with something I didn't want, versus like, it's going to only let me do things that are going to end up being pretty much good.
Fair.
So flexibility it sounds like that's absolutely good, but I don't know. I think there are times when a tool that's helping you toward a better outcome is worth having, even if it means less flexibility.
I think that's a fair assessment. The thing that makes the Nano Cortex so appealing is the form factor and price point. So it's small, and it's on the lower end of all of these products. At the moment, it's retailing for $549. That's, of course, going up. But it currently is priced below what the HX Stomp is priced at.
Yes.
And everything that I've heard is it's a very compelling product. It sounds great.
Yes.
Now, I don't love all of the things that it's missing. Like I like having a readout, and the fact that it doesn't makes it a hard sell for me. But for a lot of folks, that's not a problem. And they seem to be very, very popular in our world. So I think this announcement is only going to increase that popularity, because the end product is better and more fleshed out. And these are the things that kind of happen when you release a new product into the marketplace. They take time to evolve. And the Helix has been out for 10 years at this point. So it's going to be able to do more because they've had more time to cram stuff into it to see what it can do.
Right. 10 years worth of user feedback.
So, this product 10 years down the road could be everything that you're looking for. So if the YouTube algorithm is sending this to you 10 years from now, maybe Nano OS 7.
10. I don't know.
Yeah, it just has all the stuff you need, and you'll never want another thing ever again.
That's right.
It makes you dinner. It tucks you in. It gives
plays the guitar for you.
It sends you positive affirmations to go to sleep to.
That's right.
Who's to say?
It turns up the talent level on your Neuralink.
Everything is possible.
I do want a talent pedal. There have been shows I needed that badly.
Totally. I think this is a good week for gearheads, because there's a bunch of new stuff out there. And I do like the idea that those people who have purchased into an ecosystem, getting these bright new shiny things to their already existing hardware, that I think that's going to be something that a lot of gear companies are going to be leaning into over the next indeterminate amount of time, until whatever is happening stops happening.
Yeah.
Because it's a good place to pour R&D and resources into, because it's something that's going to benefit a wide user base and help expand it, while also like reinforcing the people who are already, bought in and on board. So
Yes.
I think we'll see a large kind of shift towards product updates while we get this hardware thing figured out in the meantime.
Right.
Which hopefully means more new shiny things for my Stomp. I mean, I'm always ready for those.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm game.
Not that I ever add stuff or take stuff away from the things I already have, but I do like opening it up and be like, oh, I'll add this amp, see what it does. I'm like, cool. I'm still going to go back to the one that I've been using because if it ain't broke, why mess with it? And that's all we got for this week. We'll be talking about gig prep and practice and other stuff. There's been a lot of really great conversations about solo gigs and how to handle when nobody shows up. Who do you pour your attention into?
Yeah.
We had one patron do his first run of casino gigs with his band.
Big learning.
Huge learning curve. Been some technical stuff, some bad gigs, some teachable moments, some unavoidable nightmare scenarios. And if you want to know more about that, hop on the Patreon. That's not going up. It is inflation proof.
Same price.
Until we decide, but I don't think we will. There's no reason to.
No.
But yeah, $5 a month. It's old and reliable and not going anywhere. Well, I'm only slightly jet lagged because we're only back from an hour, but let's go ahead and just call it for this week. I'll put this thing together and we'll probably end, each of those will end up being its own separate video on the YouTubes. So be on the lookout for that. And for those of you who don't know, these get kind of chopped up and put out in different formats. I had somebody on YouTube go, what does full episode mean versus the other one? It's like, well, I typically take out the just the catching up, podcasty parts. And I give people the option to do one or the other. Speaking of which, I actually need to get the episode that you did with Mark initially. I got to get the video from that up because I had somebody DM me this past week when the second video dropped. They're like, hey, where's the first video? I was like, well, it didn't get put out because I didn't put it out.
I haven't done it.
Yeah. So be on the lookout for that as well. And more stuff coming down the line.
We'll catch up with Mark maybe in a week or two. Yeah. Who knows? We'll
see. Otherwise, that's going to do it for this week. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to support the show, you can do all of the stuff that Dude in Long John is going to tell you. But we'll go and call it for this week. In Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
You've been listening to the Coverbandconfidential podcast for the week of May 2nd, 2025.